Hi. Hi. I'm going to forward this out real quick. And if you don't mind, let's get this video started. I'm going to talk about the actual joy revolution today. This thing that you've been seeing floating around my group, especially for all you golden micers and do-gooders. And I'm just going to break it down into why this thing's about to launch and even more so why I think that it's super, 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 super important. So let me get on my page. Let me see if I can fast forward this out. There I am. There's my beautiful red hair. I'm going to go and send that out to the Beyond Resilient crew so they can see what's going on. We got 2 viewers. Who's viewing today? Say hi to me. Because we're killing time as I fast forward or forward these things out. Oh, are you a little stalker there watching in the background? That's cool too. So I'm going to forward this to Greater Good. That's the name of my bigger group. And then I'm going to forward it to 2 more places. And then we'll be ready to go. See, it's not usually a one-person show, unlike the Golden Mic, where I have 50 people, makeup, hair, everybody, production staff. This one is just me today, and it's just me to talk about the Joy Revolution. So if you haven't met me, my name is Mark Cordone. A pleasure to meet you. Founder of Greater Good, strategic planning and life coaching. But more importantly, I spent 7 years in the game, 7 years in the game doing social justice work and paid for it, community organizing, doing stuff around getting studies programs, bringing people together around retreats, those sort of things. Danny Hayes, good to see you. And so it's going to be a little different presentation today. I'm actually going to present to you the reasons and some of the most powerful quotes that I've come across that have been the impetus for the Joy Revolution. So when in talking about the Joy Revolution, there's the first 7 years that I put into my life, professional life, where all I did was study the elements of movement, of social change, of social justice, those sort of pieces. And then in the last 7 years of my professional life, working for the man, I did work focused on positive psychology, happiness, grit, joy, growth, those sort of things. And one of the things that I've always found different is that when it comes to joy, joy has this idea that we experience these great moments and sometimes not so great moments of ecstasy, of trauma in our lives and of joy. But there seeming to be singular moments that happen internal to us. So joy, as in the Joy Revolution, as this sort of this singular thing happening. Now, revolution, you just put the word to it. The word revolution goes and stands for multiple people moving about change, causing the status quo to change, causing these buttresses that used to stand up to come down. So what happens when you start putting these 2 things together? Well, you have this idea that joy can actually be the leading force in a revolution, whereas in the past, revolutions had to do with me versus you. I have to be right. You have to be right. My idea trumps your idea and therefore takes over. Whereas joy is more along the lines of if you're happy, I'm happy, right? There's not a lot of contention there. So if this is a world truly of revolution and folks talking about the status quo changing, the reason I created the Joy Revolution is that this is one other way for us to educate ourselves, empower ourselves, so that we can create communities that are based on positivity And when it's based on positivity, they have a better chance of living a life with no regrets, a life where they feel like they're more successful, a life where right across that wheel of life, they feel like they are living it to the fullest. Sarah, it's good to see you this morning. Give me some pounds. Renee, good to see you. I'm talking about the new program, so forward it out to anybody you know. So all I'm going to do today is I'm not going to talk about the program itself. I'm going to talk about elements of quotes and thought leaders that contribute to the program. So the first one is this. It's my psychiatrist named Abraham Maslow from the humanist movement, and I'm trying to find my cursor here because this thing's going wild. Where's my cursor, folks? Okay, I'm gonna move my cursor up. Okay, so I want to start with this quote: "What one can be, one must be." So, for example, if you've been sitting there all your life and you're like, man, I really have all of these goals and I've achieved all of those goals. But there's another part of you who has this purpose to serve at a greater level, a part of you that always imagined that you could create change and positive change across the world. Well, unfortunately, Maslow says you must be that. You cannot continue to move your life living it, knowing that there's other things, there's greater potential for you out there. Because what starts to happen is you start to, what a lot of coaches say, feel small. You start to play small. You start to settle. You start to strive for other people's expectations of you. So you start going after the promotions and all this stuff and all this great stuff and moving up the ladder. But you know what? You're empty as fuck. There's nothing inside of you. So keep that in mind. What one can be, one must be. If this resounds with any of you, let me know. Let me know if what one can be, one must be, by Jonathan Maslow. It's Abraham Maslow. Dummy. I'm calling myself a dummy because I just did these slides 5 minutes ago. So here's another one. So that's coming from straight up psychology. Let's go into the work of a feminist author and thought leader, Audre Lorde. Sister Lorde, it is a waste of time hating a mirror or its reflection instead of stopping the hand that makes the glass with the distortions. Miss Melanie Klein inspired me to with this quote, and it was huge in terms of putting together the joy revolution, because in so many ways we can talk about all the self-hatred, all the lack of self-love that we had, and we can start to put it out there and realize that it's not. Well, there's a TEDx that's going on. It's not me, dude. It's you. It's the hand that makes the glass with the distortions. I'm perfectly fine. I'm perfectly happy. But this glass with the distortions is the thing that's telling me I should be sad. Does that make any sense? So keep that in mind as you're moving forward. As you notice, I'm going from psychologist to feminist theory and just kind of bouncing around. Now, here's the other one. Audre Lorde is very similar to Jonathan Maslow in that she goes and says, he who obeys does not listen to himself. He does not listen to himself. And what is it that he's obeying? What one must be, can be, one must be. So when you're obeying that, you're moving towards one must be. So he who obeys isn't necessarily obeying the internal mechanisms, the internal purpose that have you moving forward with your life. It's more so he who obeys the status quo and settles for what that version of joy and happiness is is not truly listening to the internal voice. Huge, huge, huge. And then I wanted to throw this one out there as well. Viktor Frankl, Viktor Frankl, a logotherapist, in the darkest of times was in some Nazi concentration camps. And he wrote this in terms of his freedom. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way. So essentially what this is beginning to say is, in the darkest of times, you still have the ability to choose or to respond however you see fit, and no one can take that away from you. You still have the power to respond with unapologetic kindness, to respond with gratefulness, to respond with joy. That's right. And so that's why I put this piece up there, is because a lot of us feel like we're going through some dark times right now. And so because of those dark times, because of that distorted mirror, we tend to blame other things, right? But the thing is, with this, we have ownership and power over everything. It doesn't matter what someone tries to do to you. You still have the ability to respond. Pretty cool stuff. So here we go. Let's go back to Maslow, right? Because most of the world right now, most of the world is focused on sort of the dysfunction of life, or people living okay. And it's almost like a privilege to look at joy. It's a privilege to look at the happier side of things because, hey man, I don't have post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't have this, I must be doing okay. Or it must be for the rich to indulge in the privilege of being happy. Well, here's what Maslow has to say. On the whole, I think it's fair to say that human history is a record of the ways in which human nature has been sold short. It has been sold short. The highest possibilities of nature have practically always been underrated. Certainly, it seems more and more clear that what people call normal in psychology is really a psychopathy of the average. Listen to that. A psychopathy of the average. So undramatic and so widely spread that we don't even notice that it's ordinary. The status quo is one in which we are completely underperforming. We are not shining. It's one in which that it's become so part of our zeitgeist that it's been the psychopathy of the average has become normal. And so this is really the beginning pieces where I began to say, well, you know what? As a person who's worked in social justice work, as a coach who works as a positive psychologist, there's got to be a way to bridge this. And so one of the things that I started thinking about is this idea that in really depressed environments, in the most depressed environments, if you put someone with cognitive vulnerability in there, they're prone to being emotionally changed as a result of the environment. People with cognitive vulnerability who enter a depressed environment tend to turn out more depressed. So I looked at it from a positive psychology standpoint, and I asked this: people who are, if we create joyful, positive environments, are the same people who are prone to that depression, could we increase their joy capacity, their ability to feel happiness and joy and positive emotions? And if that's the case, one of the things that could happen from the joy revolution is that as we bump up our personal levels of happiness, we then make we make ourselves contagious, we make ourselves contagious for others to feel joy as well. And as they become joyous, they become contagious for others to feel joy as well. That's one way to start a revolution without having any enemy. So I wanted to throw that out there. Let's see what else we got. And we got 5 people in the group. Thank you for joining me this morning. Yeah, here's something from Camus. Camus was, I believe, a philosopher, thought leader. I think he was a psychologist as well. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to be so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. And if you think about it, anyone who lives a little bit outside of the status quo is a total rebel. They are a total maverick. They are a total punk rocker, as you want to call them. Sarah, I forgot your name, but you have like a punk rock name to yourself. So the only way to deal with an unfree world is to be so free of it that your very existence is an act of rebellion. So think about this. If the status quo, if the norms that we grow up with are actually very suppressive, the only way that we can grow out of that is through the ideas of joy, through the ideas of community, and through the ideas of seeing happiness as a possible rebellion to the idea of sadness, depression, contentiousness, general malaise, etc., 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 etc. And this is something that I thought Sister Hooks said quite well. Let me see who's up in here. This is something that I thought Sister Hooks said quite well. Number one is our role is not to teach people to think. I feel like that's total indoctrinating, right? But rather to teach them by example the importance of taking a stance that is rooted in rigorous engagement. Rigorous engagement, meaning being there for each other, teaching people to think through just being there. That's a big deal. That's a big deal in terms of modeling. It's a big deal in terms of not indoctrinating somebody. It's a big deal in terms of being a provocateur that can get somebody to start thinking about what truly is it that makes you happy? What is the revolution that you want to start? And how can you do that without having to come into contentiousness with another party? So Sister Hooks is always on it. She's the jam, dude. So let me see what I can do. I'm getting stuck here with my slides. I've got a couple more slides and we'll go further. Y'all give me a thumbs up if you're still there. I see a couple people in the site. So here's another one. Here's another one that gets thrown out all the time. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is in an act of political warfare. I'm not reading well today. I don't have my glasses on, but think of it again. Caring for myself is not self-indulgent. It's not the whole thing about like the bonbons and all this stuff. And when people are like, oh, self-care, you must be full of yourself. It's an act of self-preservation. And when you're doing things like the Joy Revolution, you're going to have to stop and be proactive about what it is that you're doing on a daily. I call this the micro. The meso, I call this weekly. And then on the macro well-being scales, these are things that you plan 18, 16 months out for. So when you put it all together, self-care is not only something that keeps you in maintenance, it elevates your hope so that you can get more things done. Oh yeah, Joy Revolution's taken off. I love it. But we totally use feminist writing to show how people have had it right all along. It's not necessarily about coaches being coachy coach and doing all, saying that they've had it right the whole time. So Audre Lorde had it the whole time. The whole time. And here's the thing that I think is the biggest thing. The biggest thing is something that Jonathan Haidt threw out. Because here we have the idea of, number one, the idea of joy. This is a very personalized thing. We have the idea of revolution. And in many ways, it's the total giving of yourself in order for a movement to move forward, to change the status quo. And in many ways, that's a contentious movement that moves forward. And how do we merge those two? I feel like a great way of thinking about it was thrown out by Dr. Jonathan Haidt. I believe he's in New York now. I'm not sure. Used to work with one of my buddies, Corey Keyes. He wrote the actual book, Flourishing, or Flourish. And he says this: witnessing and interacting with excellent individuals can create opportunities for self-enrichment of self and the society. Joy, revolution. Joy of the self, improvement of society, revolution. Inspiring leaders, caring benefactors, and selfless saints do more than draw praise from emotionally responsive witnesses. So the leaders who are in charge of the joy revolution are doing more than just taking in praise through their ego. They're actually doing things on the ground level. Their behavior and their relationships as well. So elevation, gratitude, and admiration are not just flavors of happiness. They are a part of the human emotional repertoire that until now has been largely unexplored and whose potential remains largely untapped. Let me start it from the beginning. Not going to read the whole thing because it's long. I don't have glasses. Witnessing and interacting with excellent individuals can create opportunities for self-enrichment of the self and society. Elevation, gratitude, and admiration are not just flavors of happiness. They're a part of the human emotional repertoire that, until now, has been largely unexplored and whose potential remains largely untapped. This is why the Joy Revolution is going to start in a couple days, because as a group for the next couple weeks, we are going to look at the largely unexplored potentials that have been untapped for us to become greater when it comes to our opportunities for self-enrichment, and for us to take that and improve society for the better. I've got 5 seats left, my friend. I want you to, and it's a fairly inexpensive program. I want you to think long and hard about what it is that you are brought here to do in this world. And I want you to think long and hard about how much happiness you have right now, because I've got some models that can boost it. I also have some models that will show you the true meaning of leading a movement, not just writing a book and then you start a movement because it's on Amazon. The true steps of leading a movement. So in your in the video right now, I want you to check out the link. There's a link to my webinar. The webinar, I'm going to talk even more about this. If you know you want to secure a spot, PM me right now. I mean, that's just the fastest way to do it. It's my hope that I get to not do the webinar and I can chill, and that we have people ready to go by Tuesday. Very quickly, what we're doing is that over the course of 7 weeks, you're going to have 4 mini projects that will talk about how do I improve society for the better and my own happiness for the better. You have 1 major project, like a change in your business plan, like a TEDx that you put together. All of those things can contribute to your joy revolution. Your joy revolution can be a personal one as well. Now, the other thing is that I've got an energy leadership index for you. And if you've never seen an energy leadership index with Mark, it's badass. It's like number 3 on the Forbes list, and I've got some special training on it. So I can't wait for you to see the way that it comes out. If you've never had or if you've had an ELI, or if you've never had an ELI, it will be very different with me. Also, at the same time, 4 coaching sessions. That's one-on-one, 4 coaching one-on-one sessions to make sure that you're on point, and the group is going to be nice and small. We're going to meet in Zoom rooms Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. If this is something that is exciting for you, if the idea of joy in your life and becoming a joy contagion bomb is something that you're interested in, if the idea of movement work isn't interesting to you, PM me right now. If you are still on the fence, get on that. Get on that. Get on that webinar that I'm going to be doing this weekend. Trisha Brooke, good to see you. Melissa, it is good to see you. Danny, it's good to see you. Sarah, good to see you. Renee, thank you for taking a couple minutes out, but I'm just going to say it one more time. This is why the Joy Revolution exists, because witnessing and interacting with excellent individuals can create opportunities for enrichment of the self and the society. Inspiring leaders, caring benefactors, and selfless saints do more than draw praise from emotionally responsive witnesses. I did this. From emotionally responsive witnesses, their behavior and their relationships. Elevation, gratitude, and admiration are not just flavors of happiness. They are a part of the human emotion repertoire that until now has been largely unexplored and whose potential remains largely untapped. Tuesday, we explore it. Tuesday, we tap it. I welcome you to the Joy Revolution. Good luck. I hope to see you soon. Bye.